that okay?
Good evening, everybody. Before we get started, we have a special presentation, and I would like to invite Mr. and Mrs. Kuykendall to come down here with me. I have something to read. Whereas Thanksgiving falls on the 23rd of November this year, and whereas business interests on 23rd have launched Vision 23 promotion, and whereas Ron Sports World has been an active participant in the Vision 23 activities, and whereas Ron Sports World has been a sales tax generator on Northwest 23rd Street since 1976, and whereas Ron Sports World consistently brings customers to Bethany from all across Oklahoma, and whereas Ron Sports World currently has 7 employees on payroll, and whereas Ron and Joan Kuykendall, longtime Bethany residents, have been married 52 years, and Ron may have kept his 1954 Chevy Bel Air for 47 years, and whereas Ron Sports World continues to invest in new technologies and equipment ready for another generation, and whereas what started out as a small shoe store has survived and grown into one of the largest athletic uniform suppliers in the metro area. Therefore, I, Mayor K.P. Westmoreland, hereby declare November 7th, 2017 as Ron Sports World Day in the city of Bethany. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we get a photo? Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I call the Bethany City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 7th, 2017 to order. Please stand for the invocation tonight and tonight's flag salute. Robert, would you pray for us tonight?
Father God, thank you for this day. Thank you for our town. Please guide us tonight in making the decisions you would have us make to make our city better, Lord. In your name, amen.
Vice Mayor Knapp.
Well, I have to say, this is one of the funnest things I get to do. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Craig. She invited her third graders to come and lead us in the pledge tonight. You may recognize Mrs. Craig has been here before. She brought her third graders last year in May, and I'm really excited to have the third graders from Earl Harris Elementary, Bethany, here to lead us in the pledge.
Please join me in saluting the flag of the United States of America. Attention, salute, pledge. I salute the allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That was awesome. Item 1 tonight is the consent docket, items A through H. Do I have a discussion or any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have some discussion related to the consent docket, specifically the expenses that were included in the agenda tonight. A couple questions, and maybe these are simple questions with easy answers, I would hope. But the website upgrade, that was for $4,000. Can we get some clarification as to what was actually done?
Maybe I'll take a first swipe at this, and I might wind up inviting Nikki to come forward too. We've been in the process of looking at additional upgrades. There's been an interest in being able to provide more content on our website and provide information to the public, and it was necessary for us to do some upgrades to the website itself in order to be able to do those upgrades. If you would like some additional specifics, I'd be happy to invite Nikki up to visit about that.
I would appreciate that.
Nikki, would you mind?
Hello. Nothing's actually been done yet with it. It's in the planning stages right now. We have a developer who's working with us to go over everything that we want and how to implement it, aesthetics, how it's going to look. So you won't see any changes until all of that's completed, and then we'll have a testing phase. People will have logins. They'll be able to go in and review it and see if we need any additional changes. But that's a lengthy process that will take several months.
Now, is ImageNet involved in the process? How is that related to the $4,000?
ImageNet isn't involved. It's all Civic Plus.
Okay, so ImageNet provides the city email and access to the internet, that kind of thing.
Right.
But then we had to, I thought that they were the ones involved with the website or putting it up initially.
No, that's all Civic Plus.
It's who?
Civic Plus, that's our website provider.
Okay.
That's our host.
So Civic Plus initially did the website, and now we're upgrading it?
Right.
Okay. And the $4,000, did they bid that, or?
No, we were under contract with them already, and so that was actually at a reduced price because every 2 years you get to essentially redo your website. And since we're doing it in a year, a little over a year, they went ahead and reduced the cost for us since we're doing it sooner than we really should be.
Okay, so what is the yearly fee for that Civic Plus?
I don't have the contract in front of me. I believe it is started out. And I'm just going off of memory here. I think that the contract started around 20 annually. Oh, it's about 17 annually, and then there's a percentage increase annually.
Okay, so we're paying 17 yearly, and then we're asking for another 4,000 in addition to that?
To completely overhaul the website. It will change entirely.
Okay.
So the way it looks now will be completely different once it's done.
Why couldn't we get them to overhaul the website for the $17,000 we pay them every year?
That's not the way that works, or that's not the way it's written in the contract either.
Okay. So what do they do for $17,000 a year?
They have a website developer that comes in and a full team of people that come in and work with you on color palettes and content and widgets and everything that goes into the website, and then they have their team go in and implement all of your requested changes.
Okay, so they're maintaining the current website, and then they're going to redo the website for $4,000.
Correct.
Okay.
If I might, Nikki, you might talk just a little bit about our current website and the fact that we are unable to do certain changes. There's limitations on what our ability is to make certain changes to the current website.
Right. Well, certain aspects of the website are locked, meaning the developer has to go in and change them. I can change most things, but there are certain kind of foundational pieces that I can't change. And if we did want to change them, we would have to pay a fee per change. And it got to the point where there were so many changes that we wanted to make, it looked like it would make more sense to just go ahead and redo the website, make it more user-friendly. We had quite a bit of citizens and staff and other people say that it wasn't as user-friendly as they would like. They had a hard time finding things. We just had constant questions about where they could find forms and searchability and things like that. So part of it is not just going to be aesthetic, but it's going to be making it more user-friendly.
Okay, so is the $4,000 going to cover that to the extent we're going to get everything we need for the $4,000?
Yes, they'll do everything that we ask them to do for the website.
Is that a competitive price? Because, I mean, I did my own website, and I didn't pay $4,000 for it. I know that's not the city's website, but there's a capability within the city to do all of this on our own. Can we do that and save some money?
We're under contract with Civic Plus, so it wasn't bid out.
I would say, I would have to agree with you. We need to look at that contract. That is utterly ridiculous.
I
For the
have a
private sector,
question.
that's ridiculous. $4,000, I mean, to host a website is nothing. They're not sitting there watching the website. It's running on its own on
Yep.
a server. It's completely unacceptable.
Actually, we had our own website before we did Civic Plus. Civic Plus is the largest website producer for municipalities in the United States and Canada. It's not as if we just picked this one out of a hat and said, this is gonna work. They're the largest one. We had our own. We took care of it. Remember when I used to have to do it, and it was bad at best. And yeah, you probably have one that you do yourself, and I'm willing to bet there are certain limitations. There are many things on this Civic website that we haven't even gotten to yet because we just haven't had time to get it done yet.
Well, and I guess the question I have is, if we're paying $17,000, why didn't we get that done within the $17,000 as opposed to asking
Well,
for an
that's
additional?
not what was in the contract. The contract was that we would pay it's actually $15,000, Susan showed me. It's $15,000 was for the coverage for a year, and after 2 years, we would redo the website. We chose, not them, we chose to have it redone after a year.
Okay.
And, you know, that was a choice that was made by whatever committee or whoever, and so that you gotta pay to play, and that's why we're paying the $4,000.
What the upgrades for $4,000, have they been discussed, or is that just, I mean, is there like a menu of options that we can have for $4,000?
I'm sure there are. There are many things that they're pretty much limitless what they can do for you.
Do we know what those options are? I mean, there's some
I don't
things I'd
know.
like to see on the website.
I'm out of the loop for this decision. I was in for the first decision, but I don't know is it a committee that's
Sir,
involved in this?
Maybe I
or-
could help.
Well, I got a question real quick. It said, the answer was, it's what we want. Who is we? Because you weren't consulted. I wasn't consulted. I don't know who's
Certainly,
consulted.
you know what, there has been, as Nikki was talking about, there seems to be a continued interest in having more information be available to the public, and this was our effort to be able to deliver that more content to the people. We'd be happy to go back and provide you with all that information if you'd like, and maybe some samples of websites that we took a look at that we could be able to design ours to go, that would be able to deliver the kind of content that I think the expectation is there.
Well, I mean, I've looked at
Happy to do
I've
that.
looked at the webpage for War Acres, and they have pretty extensive public information related to the availability of commercial property, and you know, it's been a while since I looked at it, but permits and things like that have been issued, and that's just general public record that I think should be made available to the residents, not only to the residents, but to developers or anybody who wants to do business in Bethany. I mean, that's kind of our our first impression type deal, and that's a great way to download the data we have from the city government, and I think it's a resource that's not being used, but I don't know if that's included in the $4,000, so that's why I asked the question.
Sure,
That-
and
I'm sorry.
I think we have the ability that we would be able to incorporate that. We'd be happy to do that.
But you're talking about content and all that. That's the 17,000 is not including the content. The money is in the publishing, American publishing, I believe, and that's not included in the 17,000, I believe. The American
I'm sorry,
publishing
I'm
it has all the ordinances, all
Oh,
the
right, yeah, that's
the big
completely
word,
separate,
the big
right.
stuff. That doesn't include that 17,000.
Yeah, that's completely separate.
Right, so
our
it's more like,
classification.
we don't even know what we're paying, I mean, but in the free market, that is completely unacceptable. I'm just telling you, AAA does not pay that much for their website. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I have a couple comments and questions real quick. Is this mic on? Generally, a website design is completely different from hosting and closely related but different than security. So 3 components primarily. Putting a lot of dynamic pieces, video, photos, things like that. Any idea of hosting that, how many terabytes that is? Or are we paying more for that kind of thing, 50,000 links? Does that?
All three of those are hosted by Civic Plus. They take care of the security, they take care of the hosting, and they take care of the content.
Okay.
So we have that's all covered under the original contract. We
The
don't have
security
anything to
was
do with it.
28,000 or 36,000?
The what?
Security was
That's not website. That's our computer network, which would be separate.
Now the internal, in here, our network is taken care of by ImageNet.
Yeah.
But once it leaves here and goes to the web, that's taken care of by Civic Plus.
Is that included in that 17,000?
Yes, it's actually 15,000.
So
And yes, that's-
28,000 internally. So we're paying 28,000 protection from each other in here and not from the viruses that are out there.
I
That
don't
doesn't make any
understand what you're
sense.
Well,
That's not
and
how
we
it
don't
works in
have
free
anyone
market.
full-time. Generally, an organization like this with so many dynamic pieces, you'd have a full-time person or 5 potentially to have.
Well, and that's
dynamic
part of the deal.
website.
We have the ability to put all of our commercial properties on that website. It already has that section. The problem is who does that? And I don't have time to do it. Nikki doesn't have time to do it. We don't have time for the for that department to do it. You know, who do we get to do it?
There's
That's
plenty
where
of
we're
companies
running
don't do
short
that.
right now.
I mean, not to be defensive, but War Acres has the time to do it.
Well, then we could pick up another person, we might have time to do it.
I've made
person's trained
notation.
about it.
We'll take a look and see what we can do to see if we can
Well,
do
it
that.
looks
I'm
like-
not privy to this update, but if I hear what's being said, you'd like a list of the bells and whistles that are to be included in that additional money. Is that what you're asking for? And I bet somebody knows that and could provide that.
Yes, we're happy to do that.
We're paying 49,000 according to my calculation before we pay American Publishing to put all of the content on the website. So we're probably paying 55, 60,000 a year for a website. That is
I
ridiculous.
believe we said it was 15,000 that we're doing.
Oh,
That
47,000.
other money, I think, is what we're talking about is the
Codification.
technology. Well, the codification is a separate issue, and then the technology, the information technology that we have in place. So the system, the network. And we had upgrades that we did this year.
If we
too.
can get some clarification as to the availability, I think that would help me to determine that the city and the residents of Bethany are getting their money's worth. So, I mean, I think that that's reasonable. And then I also had one other comment.
Hold on just a second before you jump to something else. You had mentioned that there was a committee or somebody that oversees this.
I could be completely wrong. I thought there was a committee that was being used that had requested these changes. I don't know.
Yeah, who's like,
Well, you said
who's the
committee.
decision maker or the visionary
No,
for the website?
No, Nikki had worked with me. We had talked about a number of changes that had been requested, and we had worked together to come up with the solution to implement upgrades to our website based upon that feedback that we got about additional content that was requested.
And if we could clarify, the American Publishing is a totally different company they just keep track of our ordinances on a website that's completely separate. The only contact that our website has with that website is a link.
Right.
Right, so I don't know how much American Publishing costs us. Less than $4,000, I think.
We're still north of 50,000 for a website a year.
Okay, our
That's
website
crazy.
costs $15,000.
Okay,
That's
you got
all the website
15,000.
costs.
Okay, I don't know anybody in business that separates their website from their security. It's the same
Okay, the
company.
website has the security. It's not separate.
Okay. well,
If
then
you're
where's the
talking about the
$28,000
internal
going?
network for the city of Bethany, which is ImageNet.
Right.
Okay, that is separate. That takes care of the security that's on your computers and the security that's in this building and the 5 other buildings that it covers. It has nothing to do with the website.
I bet you they would do it for free just to get that 28 grand. Anybody ask them?
They would do the website free?
Absolutely.
Well,
That's
I don't know that they would, I mean, if we're saying they would create a brand-new website, but we're under a contract with Civic Plus right now, so it's proprietary. So
How long is that contract for, do we know?
I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if, Susan, do you have?
I believe it's year to year.
Yeah, I think it's year to year, and I think it expired probably in June, maybe, in the early summer.
I would like to weigh in on this if at all possible. I can understand your confusion. I can understand that because I went to Laserfish today to find out what we had paid in it. This same thing just popped up at me like gangbusters. I couldn't find a thing about it because Laserfish is in the tank. It had, it is, you come to City Hall and you can find it in our record at City Hall, what you need to know. But Laserfish was originally purchased and put out so that we could have a record that we could, pull up on our systems here that we have, and we wouldn't have to go running all over town. Or we could, like we used to have to do it, I've done it for 25 years, walk down to the City Hall, get your basket, go through the basket, read all the little pieces of paper that they have, and I had a better idea. But Laserfish, once it gets into the system, you lose the paperwork because it's not designed to be, well, it's designed to be kept, but it's designed to be filed away. And we do not have enough people to have a person that hand carry the city councilman around and show him all the bills. So, we need to do something with Laserfish, get those people out, so that we can have a reasonable idea of what we're spending money for. And I believe this is where you came up with, I couldn't find it. And that $4,000, I mean, it hit me between the eyes. First thing I ran into, I could not figure out what we were doing with $4,000. You said something here, a brief description on that was website upgrade. And that's 2 words to a 40-page document.
Well, and Laserfish is, of course, yet another story in our ongoing IT saga. It's a different contract, but I understand that, Susan, we've made some progress with that, and hopefully we're very close on getting that available.
I've used the little computer that the city has here for 8 or 10 years to keep up with what's going on in City Hall.
Well, suffice it to say, I think we all want to know what's going on related to the upgrade on the website. I have some ideas that I think would be beneficial to the residents. If we're going to pay that money, I think we should talk about it some more and figure out how we can do that. I had another item related to April Collins and legal services for $737.50. We didn't negotiate this deal with April, and I wanted to know specifically, is that related to her responsibilities as the city prosecutor, or is it related to her $2,000 monthly retainer, or is that part of the $150 an hour payment that is part of the deal?
That is in relation to you the council wanting me to file a lawsuit on the abatement action for 3131 North MacArthur.
Okay, so that's
That was
related.
my hourly submittal.
That's related to the $150 hourly submittal.
Correct.
Okay, so if I'm clear, the $2,000 retainer, that's just a flat fee. It's not reduced by an hourly fee. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so, okay.
So it's a salary, not a retainer.
Well, and what I don't understand is, if, being an attorney, if I have a retainer, I charge against the retainer my hourly fee until that's reduced, and then I ask my client for more money to replenish the retainer so that I can have an opportunity to bill against that. And I guess we're not doing that? Is that, I mean, I'm confused.
I don't do that either. I'm paid about $3,000 a month. A lot of months, my hourly rate at $150. That $3,000 retainer, I'm probably working for $35 an hour, I'll tell you, okay? And April is in somewhat, she's paid a $2,000 retainer, and she has spent considerably more than 20 hours under that retainer. She goes to staff meetings here. She works on ordinances with me. She works on resolutions. She does lots of extraordinary things under that, but since she's been here, I can tell you there's not been 1 month she's not spent at least 30 hours under that retainer.
Well, and I can appreciate that, but is there an itemized billing related to her hours?
Not under the retainer, no.
Okay, so,
The retainer is causing me a headache.
well, okay, I do insurance defense work, and as a litigation attorney, I have to account for every minute of my time, and I submit a detailed bill to my client. And they go through it with a fine-tooth comb. If it's justified, they'll pay me. But I don't know if that's happening here. We just pay her $2,000, and we don't know specifically what those activities are?
Well, certainly that would be an option, but if I did that, my bill to you would be more in the neighborhood of $8,000 a month. I'll
Well,
just
and
tell you.
I understand that. It's just, I don't know, and that's kind of the issue I have. I wasn't clear on the terms of the agreement to begin with, but apparently now I know.
Yes.
So,
Well,
that's just
certainly,
what-
certainly either of us could do that, but I can just tell you that from my standpoint and hers both, we both far exceed the number of hours that would calculate at 150. I promise you that. And if you want detail of what we work on, I could do that, but honestly, I'm not sure I'd want to do that at $3,000 a month. I'll just tell you, in July of this year, I went to 10 meetings at City Hall, out of my office during the day. I prepared, I believe, 10 resolutions, 5 ordinances. So, you know, you start putting the pencil to that, that's certainly a lot more than $3,000 worth.
Well-
Even at $50 an hour, that's more than $3,000 worth.
and I'm not discounting that in any way. It's just, I didn't understand the deal. I didn't understand the contract with April. And so if I had known that initially, then I probably wouldn't have asked this question. So that's kind of where I was going with that. I didn't know. And it's hard to understand for legal services because there were basically 3 different avenues of income coming in for April related to the work she does for the city. So that's my issue.
Right.
It's not the specific
Well,
amount.
the
it's-
way my contract works, I provide daily advice to the city officials. I prepare all ordinances, resolutions. I attend somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 meetings a month, and I don't account for those hours, but I'm paid $3,000 for that, whether it's $8,000 worth of work or $1,500 worth of work. That's how I'm paid. But my contract and hers both provide for extraordinary document preparation, or for litigation, or for hearings outside the Bethany city. We're paid by the hour separately, and that's billed just like any other attorney would. Her $2,000 is actually paid as a salary because the IRS requires that.
Okay, so just to be clear, and I think I'm good at this point, but the $737.50, April submitted an itemized bill for that amount at $150 an hour.
She did.
Okay.
And I believe that included the court cost and that she advanced out of her pocket as well.
Well, and that's fine. I just
Yeah.
didn't know.
No, I
And
understand.
that's the thing, because,
And also, just in fairness, April's spending an awful lot of time because admittedly, she's in a bit of a learning curve, and I'm spending time on that as well, and I'm not billing extra for that, and that probably accounts for the amount of time she spends, but the amount of time that she and I both spend advising city officials is extreme. She's advisor to the police department. I'd say she gets 1 or 2 calls a day from them.
Well, and I'm not trying to discount that
No,
in any
I'm
way.
just- I'm trying
Well,
to explain as well.
You know, I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you for letting me know. The problem is, I didn't know if that was part of the $150 an hour, or the $2,000, or the, fees related to prosecuting on behalf of the city. So that's my issue, and now that I know, I appreciate the clarification.
If I thought she wasn't doing $2,000 worth of work a month, I'd be first to say something about it.
Well, and I think that, I understand that, but that, my issue is, I didn't know how or what part of her contract with the city was related to the 737.50.
Right.
So, that's all I'm asking.
That's the 3131 MacArthur building's what that is.
Okay.
And I think maybe some of the confusion is that before David came to me, this wasn't a position. And so I've had to go to David several times, because I agree with you. I would much rather be a retainer, because I would be making a lot more money from the city of Bethany. Maybe not for more than 1 month, but it would be a good month. Because I will tell you, it took many, many hours to go over that code that I did last month for you all. I didn't charge a penny for that. That was part of my $2,000 salary, if you will. But if that is truly my salary, it's the lowest salary I've ever earned in my life. So I believe is, and I don't really understand 100%, but my understanding is when my fee from the court comes in on the court report, I'm one of the employees or contract employees for the court. At $50 an hour, I am the lowest paid member of the court lawyer. Lower than the other prosecutor, lower than the judge. I am the one at the police department, probably 3 days a week. Fire department, at least once or twice a week I get a phone call. I'm reviewing all of the fire department's policy manuals, the fire department's collective bargaining agreement. All of that is under the $2,000. That's
Right.
what I do on Friday nights after work. So I can start keeping track of all that, but then I'm going to need to charge for billing for the time that I am keeping track of all that.
Well, and I understand that, and I appreciate that, and thank you for doing that. There's no question that's something that's within your, job description, and that's
If it
okay.
helps you to
That's
call it
okay.
salary, maybe that's better, because I agree, it's not a retainer. 'Cause
I
a
think
retainer
part,
should be
I think
something
part of the
pull off
problem, the confusion rather, is the fact that the council hires the city attorney and the city manager, and I guess the judge, but yet we had no involvement in your hire, zero. And so the first time it came up, Mr. Palmer asked the question, what were the terms or where are we at? And that's when it was unfolded to us what all this was. And so I think that in and of itself causes this horseshoe to sit here not knowing what we're paying for. We weren't involved in the negotiations or the hiring or the interviewing or anything. So I think that's where a lot of the questions come from, because we're trying to wrap our head around what are we paying for, where are we at.
And I agree. I mean, I'm right there with you, because this was all new to me when David came to me with it.
Part of it may be my fault, but remember, she wasn't hired until that came to you. She wasn't hired before you approved the agreement with her that night. She had not been hired prior to that.
Well,
Now, I admit, I did have many conversations with her about her interest and her expertise and those kind of things, but she wasn't really hired until you approved it that night. I don't remember what day that was.
But the fact is, I wouldn't be asking this question if we had participated in the negotiations.
I think it was the same night that the judge, the substitute judge, was sworn in, yeah.
I don't remember.
It
the
was
night,
August
but-
15th. The judge was the
but,
next.
Certainly, there wasn't any attempt to be secretive. I was simply trying to locate a good fit for you guys, and honestly, I think I did. But
Correct, and you called me and talked to me about that
Sure.
prior to. I just wasn't,
right.
in my rookie season, not knowing what my responsibilities were and where we were supposed to be involved in
Yeah, well,
certain things.
Certainly, you hire me, and you hired April as well. City manager didn't hire her, nor did I, because I can't hire anybody.
Was the code you went over, the Appendix A, free speech thing you did, is that the code that you went over?
No, when we revised all of the fines and bond schedule, when I went over all the ordinances to verify all the things that were not correct in our ordinances and not reflected properly according to state law.
So these, the ones that are on here are to get fees up to where they need to be, is that what all?
That was last month when we did the bond and fine. I don't know if you were here last month. We did a bond and fine schedule last month that revised all of the fines. Okay.
That was time
It was
consuming.
July.
That was pretty time consuming. Stacy Peck, the court administrator, and the judge and I worked on that for several days, tweaking it and finding things and going through the state statutes and the ordinances to make sure we were completely in compliance. And all the ordinances that are on the docket today, except for the one that David did, I did all those based on laws that were changed in July. So, and I appreciate your position, Councilman Palmer. I really do, because I had a lot of those same questions, because I went to David and said, there's no roadmap for this. So this is a new position, and I'll probably call David once or twice a month and go, how do I do this? What do I bill for? Because there's not like a really clear outline, because he's been this for 47 years, so he's just done it.
We get you some billing guidelines. I have a set you can look at if you want to do it. I'm just
can't
kidding.
wait.
But thank you for the clarification. The other issue, and I'll move on, is the payment of $5,000 to the Northwest Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. Do we know, and I guess it says business and cultural development, did they itemize their activities for that payment? Is that the Bethany 23rd Street activity?
This is part of our $20,000 a year contract
Okay.
with them, and so it's their quarterly billing.
So we have a contract with them and we're obligated to pay them that amount?
Yes, sir, for 1 year. And I
Okay.
believe this is our second payment. Is that, do you recall, JR?
That contract is cancelable if we so choose to cancel it.
I believe it is. I'll double check that, but I believe it is.
Well, I was just wondering, because I'd like to see if they could help me out in Ward 2, but apparently that's not a priority, so I just wanted to mention that as a part of their payment of $5,000 at this point. But that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
May I follow up on that? If there's anything that you'd like for me to follow up with her on, I'm happy to, or put her in direct contact, Jill, in direct contact with you.
Okay.
Motion to approve consent docket.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is the presentation of quarterly financial report. I'm sure we have a presentation.
So all my items were on the agenda, isn't that what I say? Good evening, and this is the first quarterly report for fiscal 2018. I've changed up our quarterly report to add a couple of schedules in there that you haven't seen before that I hope will be informative to you. Based upon some prior meetings, I've included the Public Safety Fund, which is Fund 021. You all had quite a discussion on it, and based on those discussions, I've worked out a spreadsheet that details the exact balances on each of those funds. So that's available for anybody to come see. In our general fund, we've had $2,110,940 this year. That's only about $60,000 over our budget. We've had a little bit of improvement in sales tax collections and business developments from new taxpayers, accounting for $81,000. Our actual expenditures were $2,594,000, and that's $674,000 less than budget, due primarily to staffing shortages, changes in operations, and we haven't had any significant emergencies this year, so that always comes in handy. Our general fund balance ended the quarter $446,000 higher than it started as a result of operations and transfers. The Bethany Public Works Authority, their revenues were $2,161,000, which is $26,000 less than budget. And once again, I can't account for how we managed to budget that closely, but we're really on top of that. We do still have a pending FEMA reimbursement for the storm damages back in 2016, and I still estimate those to come in somewhere in the $500,000 range. Operating expenditures have been $1,315,000, and that amount is $881,000 under our budget. As a direct result, that our capital expenditures haven't been, we're getting going on our capital expenditures, and it takes a while to get geared up, to be honest with you. We do anticipate that that's going to come along, and they'll move forward before the end of the year. Our capital improvement fund this year has received $123,000 in sales taxes and $267 in interest. The fund has ended the quarter with $1,532,000, and we've actually budgeted about $800,000 or $900,000 of that to be spent this coming year. The Bethany Development Authority, I think this is probably going to be one of the last times we actually report on this particular authority as any kind of significant fund. Its activities are being substantially taken by the Bethany Economic Development Authority, which we are just now in the process of getting fired up. You asked a question about the funding for the the $5,000 bill we just paid for
Northwest Chamber?
Yes, I'm sorry. And that actually is budgeted to come out of the Bethany Economic Development Authority. So a lot of these things that we've been doing and going along are actually part of the BETA process, and we'll be moving those funds over there as we get those accounts and everything structured and going. So we've made great progress in getting that done. We just got the bank account open today, and we'll see how that process goes from here.
JR, those numbers, accounting will still come under our purview to look at those numbers.
You're still going to have purview. I mean, you're still going to have the ability to see those numbers. Now, the reporting structure of BETA is much more similar to, for example, the Bethany War Acres situation. So you're still going to have financial statements available, but in a somewhat different process.
Okay, I just want to say, JD, I'd like for JR to be at every council meeting. And I'm sure it's a big coincidence, but whenever there is a question that we have for him or somebody has for him, he's not here. And we never seem to get the answer afterwards, so I'd like him at every meeting.
Well, certainly, and JR and I talked about that just this week, so he's
Okay.
planning to.
He's slacking off a little bit. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, anyway. And really, are there any other questions? We're still projecting to end the year with a projected unrestricted cash balance of $20 million. And let me explain. Under the accounting world, there's restricted and there's restricted, but this $20 million is going to be available to us for future investments and improvements to our city. So at this point in time, we're still solid.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
There's I don't know what page it's on. It looks like it's page 10 of your report. You show different funds, show whether they're restricted, unrestricted, investment, so on, and a department. Where does the cemetery fund fit into that schedule? Is that included in in the general fund category?
No, sir, the cemetery fund, are you looking at the very last page of the report by any
It
chance?
says number 10 down at the bottom. No, it's got color on it.
Okay. These are from the bank account presentations, and these are actually taken from the bank statements, and these are not from the general ledger type. Okay? So I take these strictly straight off the bank balances. If you'll look back on the last page of this report.
Yeah, I see cemetery fund says $268,000.
Right. And
Where
that
is
is a
that money
separate.
invested, I guess, is my question.
Primarily, that money is invested with Bethany First over here.
Does that show up on, somewhere under that other page I was
Yes,
looking
it
at?
does. I wish I hadn't stapled this now.
I'm not trying to be difficult, I was just trying to understand how that was banked.
Year deposit.
You can get back with me on that if you don't know right offhand.
Well, again, this is sorted by the banks rather than by the funds, but yes, the funds are kept entirely separate in the general ledger.
Okay.
So,
So it's probably in this one that
It's fund number 078, and I'm not seeing it right.
David, was your question if the funds are restricted?
yes, I just didn't see it in the investments there as a separate fund, but I assume I know it's reserved in the general ledger because it has to be. But,
And quite frankly, I may have omitted it from this particular schedule. It's kind of hard to see some of those letterings.
I see that we've got a meter deposit fund as a separate listing.
Yes. And you'll see that those are all not available for future expenditures. So the only thing that makes it over to the right-hand column are projected unrestricted fund balances, are those funds that are actually available for ultimate approval to be appropriated and expended for capital expenditures or operating expenses or what have you.
I follow you.
So, for example, the cemetery trust, yes, there's still gonna be $155,000 left available at the end of the year for you all to reappropriate.
JR, I had one question about the departmental expenditures on the general fund budget variance report. There's a non-departmental line item for $480,000. Can you tell me what that's for?
Which page are you looking at?
I'm talking about, they're not numbered. It's page 5 in sequence. Does that make sense?
This one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The non-departmental expenditures are going to involve those items, for example, contingencies. We plan every year to protect ourselves from ice storms and that sort of thing by setting aside funds, typically $300,000 to $600,000. There's a number of other items that are not truly associated with a particular department per se. They're not really coming off the top of my head right at the moment, but trying to think of something real quick. Basically, it would be an item that would cover more than one department. Well, we do have legal contingencies too. That's exactly right, but that's in 056.
Okay,
Yes, for the water issue that we have in our public works budget, we do have a contingency there for legal fees.
okay. So could that non-departmental fee, could that be related to wells or whatever the city council feels appropriate related to?
Not in the general fund.
Okay,
I'll have to check to be absolutely certain on that, but my intent was that all those costs would be through the public works, which is 056.
okay.
But it's the same in both funds and in all the funds that have those characteristics. It's the same decision-making process. This is not something that affects administration or finance or the police department. This is something that covers the whole
Right, so
spectrum of the
when those
city.
expenditures are made, it's classified as non-departmental from that fund?
Exactly.
Okay,
And we do have, this question was raised in the prior city council meeting, the issue on non-departmental funds and some of these other fund types. For example, in 021, which is the Police and Fire Safety Fund, we don't have a department in there. Each one of those categories, for example, we were talking about ICE revenue today. ICE comes in as a grant, or we receive a check in the mail. It's required to be spent for certain types of items, so we set up a related expense account. Now, what we have just done and just accomplished today is we have set up a fund balance report and account for each one of those type activities, so that when the year rolls over, we're not going to lose the identity of that again. I went back to 2005 and recreated the entire spreadsheet. So we've got that detailed information now, and we know where the money came from, and we know where it's supposed to go.
thank you.
Not unless, no, there's really no reason to. It's just a presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, JR.
Thank you.
Minutes would just reflect that that report was presented.
Item 3 is approval of Resolution 1486, designating portions of North Asbury and North Mueller Streets from Northwest 42nd Street to Northwest 46th Street as one-way streets during regular school days and directing appropriate signage to be erected. I would also add that the recommendation was for it to be from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days only. Do we have any questions?
Did that recommendation recommend type of signage and placement of signage?
We worked together with the engineering firm and discussed the signage that would be entailed. In fact, we went ahead and working with the mayor, we went ahead and preemptively placed an order for the signage that met the MUTCD and the engineer's recommendations for that. And I do have an update on that too. That signage will be here ready to go tomorrow. So we can start installing that as early as tomorrow morning. And again, if you approve, well, not again, but if you approve it, what we will do is we will begin installing it. We'll bag the signs until all the signage is up, and then we'll take all the bags off at the same time. So it'll go into effect. So we don't have certain areas that are out of sync with the rest of it.
I do want to make sure that I'd like a time limit on this. I know that the police are busy doing the things that they've got to do instead of taking care of this issue, but I know that they get busy and they do get grumpy like the rest of us. And I want to make sure that I'd like a grace period or something. 30 days, I would say, would be sufficient to add to this, unless it's being abused. But I mean, so somebody won't just get a ticket right out of the bat.
our deputy police chief is here. I would assume that we probably will do a education time period with this, just as we've done before, where we can remind folks.
Right. We're still kind of really in a grace period on the last ones. We really have not issued many citations. The only citations issued were to the people that were just very adamant that they're going to do what they're going to do.
Right.
So that would be the only time anyone received any citations on this. So we're as lenient as we can on this deal. So we understand it's a pretty big change.
Thank you. I would like to, because these signs are your generic, normal signs. They're not flashing, they're not lit up, they're not blinking or anything like that. I'd like the council at some point in time to maybe discuss, maybe over the summertime, if it is safer to have these, which are more expensive signs, but if it's safer for our children, then I'd like to have that discussion. If it's not, maybe we bring in the engineering firm or something to find out, get some feedback on that. If it's not, then these signs suffice, then we go with those and stay with those. But I'd like to kind of research
Did our
that.
engineering firm recommend electronic? I'm assuming we did what they're recommending for signage, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, and I look forward,
I was wondering how they're going to handle cross streets there. You know, we have a cross street at 46th Street and one at 48th Street.
So each one of these, that's why I was talking about needing to bag the signs, because there's so many to put up around. But each one of those cross streets will have that extra sign that will say the 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. school days only. So we'll have those at each one of those intersections.
But how will traffic flow?
Well, so if it's during school days, during those hours, it'll be a one-way, as we've been operating recently. But after those hours or during the summer, then it will be two-way traffic.
Okay, so it will be kind of a loop situation. What about 42nd Street? Is it going to be a loop situation also, or will it be a two-way street as we have?
It's a two-way.
Yep.
It'll be a two-way street. 46th Street will be a one-way street,
Two-way.
two-way street.
Yes, only
Asbury and Mueller are the only ones that are one-ways.
The north and southbound.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones.
And at the end of school days, they will revert to a two-way street.
Yes, sir.
There's one of these near my office on 46th Street between Classen and Western, and it works well. I'm sure it's an adjustment period, but it doesn't present any real problems in that area, so people get accustomed to it.
well, and I look forward, I look forward to the next one-way in Bethany, because now we know what to do and how to do it, to get approval from the city council before implementing the policy and getting a traffic study and allowing the process to take its course. So I'm optimistic that this will not happen again, and I'm looking forward to bigger and better things related to one-ways in the city of Bethany.
I don't know of any other place in Bethany that we should even be discussing a one-way.
Well, you know, there's something about this, that the city of Bethany for years has had a traffic commission. And this just seemed to fly around the traffic commission and over our heads. And it could have been solved much easier if it had been brought there instead of just do it, you know, and you want to do it. And I think since we are a body that makes those decisions, we should have been brought into this to help with this decision.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to move, motion to approve on Resolution 1486. I know you're getting ready to call for that, so.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're good. Do I have a second? Second. Please cast your votes. Item 4, approval of ordinance number 1943 on reading by title only.
Motion to approve by reading by title only.
Just a second.
I've got some discussion, I guess. Can I bring that up, Mr. Mayor, as a point of order?
Do we need a second first, or do we need to have the discussion first?
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a second, okay.
Did you want to discuss putting it on reading by title only, or after it's on reading
No,
by
I
title
think he's
only?
waiting for you to read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
An ordinance repealing chapter 39, section 3901 through 39.99 of the Bethany Code of Ordinances pertaining to emergency medical services, providing for repealer, severability, and declaring an effective date. I might give you some explanation for why we have this 12-page repealing ordinance, and that is that this is the Emergency Medical Services Code that Bethany adopted when we first began using IMSA as our service provider. And this was a requirement of IMSA in order to participate in their service, that we had to adopt this rule, or these rules, and frankly, most of them are not applicable now that IMSA will not be the provider on January 1. So I'm recommending we repeal all of this chapter, and then we are replacing one section in the next ordinance. And the next ordinance is also required in the agreement that you approved with Samaritan, which provides them territorial protection for their ambulance service, so that some other provider can't come in and make ambulance or emergency medical services runs in Bethany. But that's the explanation of the two. Most of what's in the ordinance that we're repealing is in your contract with Samaritan. The relevant things are about for instance, the medical control, the quality and equipment of the ambulances, the first responder qualifications, those kinds of things. Those are all in your contract.
Do we have any questions or discussions?
I've got a question. JD, there's nothing in this that removes the city council's authority and gives it to the city manager, is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
So you don't know?
In the ordinance we're repealing?
Well, the new
There's
ordinance.
nothing in about the city manager in the new ordinance.
No, this just pertains to rules governing the operation of emergency medical services, that's all.
Okay. It's a fair question. I mean, there's several instances of that. It's a fair question.
Well, and my concern on this was I want the public to know that because we are changing our ambulance service to Samaritan, that there is a service, or I guess you'd call it a subscription, that you can get with IMSA on a yearly basis. So, for example, if you had an accident or you needed an ambulance outside of the city of Bethany, if you're on a limited income or you think you may need ambulance service outside of Bethany, I think you can pay a nominal fee per year to allow IMSA to provide service to you as a resident of Bethany. So my concern was, now that we have Samaritan, it's only for the city of Bethany. Before, we had IMSA for the city of Bethany and their network, which was all over the metro area. So I want the residents to be aware that I think it's, from what I understand, it's like $45 a year, but that is an excellent idea, especially if you're on a limited income and you could not or would be unable to pay for a trip in the ambulance to the hospital. We need to actively educate and provide that information to our residents so that they are aware and ultimately can save some money so they don't have to be in that situation.
Is that $45 per person or per household?
I'm not sure. I think it's per household, but
That would
I'd
only
have to
be,
check on that.
only be needed if you did not have insurance, though.
And that's correct. I mean, obviously for over 65, you have Medicare. People may have Medicaid, but there is a certain percentage that would apply, and we just need to make sure they're aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and there is an option that you can have an ambulance service outside of the city of Bethany if you fit within those parameters.
To
If I could
supplement, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up that I made a note for us to go ahead and publicize that. We have talked about that already. In fact, in the newsletters that are going out with their utility bills in November, there is a notation about that. We're letting people know what the website is where they can go to subscribe to that IMSA subscription.
And to supplement what Councilmember Palmer said, not only is it a risk for people who don't have insurance, but it's also a risk for people who have high deductibles on their medical insurance. For instance, if you had a $2,500 deductible, you might get a $2,500 bill from IMSA if you had an automobile accident, say in Oklahoma City. So, you know, people who work outside the city, it's probably a real good investment. I agree with you.
So I have a motion and I have a second. Please cast your votes. Item B is approval of sections 1 through 4 of ordinance number 1943.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Please cast your votes.
This doesn't have an emergency clause. It becomes effective January 1, just like the contract with Samaritan does.
Item 5, approval of ordinance number 1944 on reading by title only.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussions, or did we get that out of the way already?
Need a vote on the reading by title only.
Please cast your votes.
An ordinance amending the Bethany Code of Ordinances by adding Chapter 39, Section 3901 and 02 pertaining to restrictions on persons providing emergency medical services, providing for penalty, repealer, severability, and providing an effective date, which is January 1, 2018. And I explained briefly earlier, this limits other providers other than Samaritan from making emergency medical service runs in Bethany, with some limitations on that. For instance, if it originated in another city, they can come through Bethany, those kinds of things. But it's my recommendation this be approved because this was a requirement in your contract you approved last month for Samaritan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I've got a question. You know, you said not allow IMSA or any other ambulances to work inside of Bethany. What if a guy pays $45 and gets IMSA to come and get him in Bethany because he falls through the cracks of all of the other things?
They won't come into Bethany once Samaritan is our provider.
Well, so Samaritan will provide anybody that lives within the city of Bethany free within the city of Bethany, and the accidents within the city of Bethany.
If they have a utility bill in Bethany and they're charged the fee, they're covered under the agreement with Samaritan.
So
And you're
anybody
paying Samaritan an annual fee or monthly fee to provide that service, and it's being funded by an addition to everyone's utility bill, and that provides them service within the city of Bethany.
So it's to any apartment resident, anybody like that, who doesn't even pay, the apartment residents don't pay utility bills.
I'm not sure how we're doing on, do you know, JD, how we're working that on?
Yeah, I might ask JR.
I'm not sure how we're doing that billing on apartments. It'd be the same as we did for IMSA because we had the same arrangement for IMSA.
Right, they're, for example, a 100-unit apartment complex, they're being charged for 100 units. So that would add $2.60 or something like
So
that.
they'd pay 100 times $2.60.
As my learned friend, Mr. Palmer, says, we don't want to leave any stone unturned for a person that lives in Bethany to maybe have to pay for a ride to the hospital in Bethany.
And
I just want to make that definitely clear.
I'll also make it clear, whether you have water service or trash service or not, as long as you are a resident of Bethany living within the city limits, you're going to be assessed that IMSA or that pickup fee. So
How do we do that? How do we do that if they don't get a utility bill?
they get a utility bill. Now, whether they pay it or not is a different matter, but we continue to pursue it.
But we don't bill people who don't have utilities.
Yes, we do. That-
How?
Well, because they're not, just because they don't, they had their water cut off or something like that.
Oh, no,
does-
I was thinking about,
Everybody has solid waste.
They use a leach field for their sanitation, and the garbage truck doesn't come down their streets because he can't get up and down it. What are
And
they gonna do
we
then?
still have stormwater fees too. And so there are a number of other fees that are.
everybody that gets a utility bill will be covered on this.
You'd have to go to the cemetery to avoid some of those fees. That's all I can tell you.
So if somebody doesn't have health insurance, just to clarify, it's covered under their utility bill. They're not gonna be billed $900, $1,900.
That's correct.
That's right.
Don't make jokes about the cemetery, okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a utility bill?
I'm not joking about that.
No, the apartment pays most of them. Some apartments probably have separate water service, but not many. Most of them, there's one major meter for the whole unit.
Okay, I'm so confused now. We still need to get a vote, right, for item B? Okay, please cast your votes for sections 1 of ordinance number 1944. Item 6, approval of ordinance number 1945 on reading by title only.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we waive the reading of ordinance number 1945, 46, 47, 48, 49, and 50 by title only, and adopt the ordinances as provided to us.
I think you'll have to vote. I think you can you could waive the reading, but I do think you'll have to vote on each one separately because your charter requires that the emergency clause be voted separately from the ordinance. So I would suggest that you start with item 6, just read the item and then ask for a motion to approve 1 through 3, and then a separate motion to approve section 4.
Okay, item number 6, approval of ordinance 1945, amending the ordinances pertaining to false or bogus checks. Approval of sections 1 through 3 of ordinance number 1945. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Let's add to that and waiving the reading of the title.
And waiving by reading by title only.
Is this A and B only?
A and B, because you have to do C separately, right? Yes.
Well, is there a need on these 4?
Are these not state regulations?
Well, in order for us to,
I would love to discuss.
prosecute
There we
these,
go. Hey, you're gonna earn your money back.
I would love to earn my money tonight, Mr. Shirey. Yes, there is a statute for this. The problem is the way the statute passed in July, And so in July, for the majority of these ordinances, majority of these crimes, before July, the misdemeanor limit was 500. After July 1st, the misdemeanor limit at the state went to 1,000. And so if you are a victim of a crime in Bethany for $550, we can no longer prosecute that in Bethany. Now we have to take you to the state. So that adds extra work on police officers, taking everything down to the state, leaving it in the hands of the district attorney's office, which, as you can imagine, well, if you pay attention, there's a lot more misdemeanors than there ever used to be at the state level right now. I had a conversation with a longtime prosecutor at the state last week, who they're just inundated with misdemeanors, and so that's why when we were here a month ago, we added, if you will recall, all of the CDS charges now, a first offense CDS, a 15th offense CDS charge. If it is a simple possession, CDS is a misdemeanor in the state of Oklahoma. That is inundating the misdemeanor departments of all the state ADA's offices. And so we've been given the green light to prosecute those at the city level, and so that's why we amended our ordinance last month to include all schedules of any CDS. Simple possession can be prosecuted here. So it's kind of the same thing. This should have probably been done in July. This is one of the things I realized we needed to update when I was going through the bond and fine code last month, and that's why I thought it was really going to be just change the definition of petty larceny, and then as we started looking deeper and deeper into it, we realized that there was actually 6 ordinances that needed to be changed. 4 needed to be changed just because the value changed from 500 to 1,000. There's actually 2 that we've never been able to prosecute at the city level that we're going to now, and there's one that if we don't pass this law tonight, it's not a crime in the state, in the city of Bethany or in the state of Oklahoma to commit this crime that used to be a crime. That one is making false declaration of ownership to a pawnbroker, 132.109. That is ordinance 1948.
We were heavily involved, Mr. Shire and I, in the pawn shop with the pawn shop people at the Capitol. I remember that being in there.
Yeah, it's in there. That what they've done was, prior to the passage of the state question, making false declaration of ownership to a pawnbroker, for those of you who don't know, is when you take something that you don't own and you go to a pawn shop and you say, I own this. Stolen property. Right, I own this, it's mine, but it really isn't. And that is the primary way we find and recover stolen property. You get your house broken into, you have your car burgled out in front of your driveway, you've left your tool kit out front while you've gone into the bathroom, and you come out and all your tools are gone. And it had your grandpa's name engraved on it. So you go around to the pawn shops and you find your toolkit that's been pawned at the pawn shop. And you go to the pawnbroker, this is my grandpa's toolkit. Here's a picture of me with my grandpa's, here's my police report where I showed that I made the report. If that toolkit costs less than $1,000, that is not a crime anymore in the state of Oklahoma, the way they rewrote the statute. They were supposed to make it a misdemeanor. They didn't do it. And so we can't do any, that's one of the things the ADA was talking to me about last week at the courthouse, was that unless you can prove that that was stolen from your house by, it was a burglary or a robbery, which are very specific things you have to prove, unless you prove that, if it's a larceny, if it's something that was just picked up out of your store or picked up off of your front porch or your bike that was taken or anything like that, and it's not a robbery or a burglary, it is not a crime to make a false deck unless it's worth $1,000 or more.
We were flat out lied to when it was put in that, because we were told it was.
And I think
the operator too.
I believe the intent was to do that, but it did not happen when they actually did, because when you read the actual language of state question, whatever that state question was, I have it here.
Because I was worried about that when they filed for that.
Yeah, when you read the language of state question 780, the goal was to make misdemeanors 1,000, and under 1,000 is a misdemeanor, and over 1,000 is a felony, just to raise that value. 25 years ago, it was $50. The last 25 years, it's been $500. They want to make it 1,000, and that was their intent. And when they proposed the slew, and this is the problem when you change things all at once, when they proposed the slew of amendments to all the statutes, this one fell through the cracks. They did not provide a misdemeanor version of it. The only other one that's really different is years ago, I guess, we had an ordinance for concealing, receiving stolen property, which is another way we actually solve burglaries. We rarely catch the people burglarizing a house. I say we, I'm not a police officer, but I feel like one sometimes. But we rarely capture people burglarizing a house. What we capture them with is a week later with your items, your driver's license, your credit cards, all those things. Concealing or possessing or receiving stolen property is the primary way prosecutors prosecute burglars. We can't prove you burgled it, but we can prove you possessed it. And so that's our main tool. Well, that used to only be a felony no matter what the value. Now they've made that a misdemeanor. We used to have an ordinance many, many years ago, back when all the ordinances had different numbers, 11 dash whatever. And so we have revived our old ordinance, our old CSP ordinance. Mr. Shire, you may remember this one. It was 11-202 back in the good old days. We've revived that, and now it is going to be a new ordinance again here where we will be able to prosecute and we will be able to defend or protect the rights of the citizens of Bethany, even if the state's not going to do so, for up to $1,000 if anyone's burgled here.
Anything below $1,000 is a misdemeanor.
And right, and we can
And that's
prosecute
why
that here.
we're passing these new ordinances.
And that's why I'm asking for the emergencies, because right now, these crimes are just kind of in the ether until we get our laws to protect our citizens.
I'd like for JD to have code enforcement and possibly somebody else go by and look at some of that, at the original application of that pawn shop, which we didn't like in the first place. And that's exactly the opposite of what we were told when it was approved by the city. And also that they would not be pawning cars. And obviously they're in the car business now. They're pawning cars. But we need to take a look at that and see if they're up to what was written on the application also as to their business practices. And their record keeping mainly, whether it's 1,000 or there's a lot of different record keeping at pawn shops. Make sure it's up to date.
I wanted to supplement April's comments, two things. Number one, the primary purpose of us doing this is to allow us to file more cases in our municipal court rather than having to send our officers downtown to file these cases. Secondly, this was all part of the big movement last year that we were going to reduce prison crowding and so on by changing drug offenses to misdemeanors from felonies, and all this kind of got caught up, and that's probably why some of these things fell through the crack. It was kind of an omnibus thing that they did.
Absolutely. But that's why we're asking for the emergency. Otherwise, we wouldn't. But it's been in law in Oklahoma since July 1st.
Thank you for your work. I
You're
think
welcome.
we should pass this.
Yes.
This will not require us to keep people in our jails or anything like that.
No, in fact, all the stuff you passed last month is helping us greatly to get people out of our jail, reducing the bond fines and stuff.
Because it's a losing proposition when we lock somebody up in jail. Somebody's gonna go in and not gonna pay anything for it.
Absolutely.
So Chief Reed, in your opinion, these emergency clauses are an important thing.
Absolutely, because as of right now, we cannot let anyone sign a complaint against these crimes, or officers can't write citations or make an arrest on them because they're not an offense in Bethany right now. So if the emergency clause is approved, we can start doing that tomorrow.
So, if you don't mind, so I apologize to the citizens. We didn't know this, and actually we were lied to about it by the operator, in my opinion. So if somebody goes in there and sees their grandpa's shotgun or TV, whatever, and they call you, there's absolutely nothing that can be done unless they track down the individual for a misdemeanor.
Just to reiterate what April said, unless we can prove it was a robbery or a burglary, you're correct. If it's under $1,000 in value, then as of right now, there's no crime committed.
So we don't have a
according to the state law.
retroactive policy. It's from tomorrow. So,
As soon as you pass it,
Okay.
it's an emergency.
Yeah, it would take effect at whatever time it is if you pass it.
with all due respect, City Council, I think we should pass this. Time is of the essence.
Definitely.
Mr. Shire's comment about it being a losing proposition to lock people up in their jail, probably those people who got beat up by somebody, and somebody got put in jail for it, don't think that's a losing proposition.
So can we do all these like Palmer was talking about with the emergency, or
No,
do we need to
I
go
do
in
each one of them
individually?
separately, but just the same motion.
A and
like
B together,
on,
A and B together, and then C.
Yeah, A and B together on each one, and then C separately.
Okay. So item 6, approval of ordinance number 1945, sections 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion. Second.
Please cast your votes.
And that would include and waiving first reading by title only.
Item C, approval of section 4 of ordinance number 1945, the emergency section. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 7, approval of ordinance 1946, sections 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item C, approval of section 4 of ordinance 1946, the emergency section.
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 8, approval of ordinance number 1947, sections 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item C, approval of section 4 of ordinance 1947, the emergency section. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 9, approval of ordinance number 1948, sections 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item C, approval of section 4 of ordinance 1947, the emergency section. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 10, approval of ordinance number 1949, sections 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please
I have
cast.
a question on that. What is petty larceny?
It's under $1,000. Stealing something under $1,000.
Is petty larceny spelled correctly?
Yes, it is.
It's
Petty.
French, Mr.
P-E-T-I-T,
Shirey. It's,
That's Latin.
well, it's Latin, sorry, Latin, sorry. But it's
Spelled without a Y.
it's
Means
petty.
small-
It's not
small
pet,
in
it's,
Latin.
it's not
That's item
petite, it's
11, isn't
petty.
it?
Not to be petty.
Yeah,
We're on
gotta do
10.
that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about last month when we were talking about pissoirs and I was getting all my French and Latin confused.
Councilman Shirey, that was not a petty comment.
Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item C, the emergency section. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 11, approval of ordinance number 1950, sections 1 through 3. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item C, the emergency section. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I just ask for a clarification? Back on number 9, I believe on items B and C, we meant ordinance number 1948. I didn't catch that until the motion was made.
Yeah, that's a typo on
Yeah.
the agenda. is what
I just want to make sure
Okay.
it was stated, it was 1948
Okay.
that we were passing. Thank you.
Item
April speaks fluent Latin, by the way.
Item 12, call to the public. Is there anyone who would like to address the council? If so, please step to the mic and address your name, state your name and address. Anybody? All right, moving on. Item 13, city attorney's report.
All my items are listed on the agenda.
Item 14, city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we closed a chapter. I kind of going off script here, but I feel like I need to make a comment on the regarding the issue on the one-ways. I just want to share with the public, I had recommended, we had taken action on the staff level to put into place the one-ways out of a concern primarily for the safety of children. We did meet with the school staff and worked with them to implement that. However, in retrospect, there were things that I would do differently if I could do it over again. And Councilmember Shirey was correct when he said earlier that we do have, or we used to have, a traffic committee. That was not in existence when I came here, but I am understanding that there is one, and we're reappointing one now. And if, as Councilmember Palmer says, the next time we have a one-way come around, we certainly will utilize that group of people to bounce ideas off of, and there'll be more things. There'll be other things that are beyond one-ways that we'll deal with in the future as far as traffic and streets are concerned in our community. But I do want to make very clear that I do sincerely apologize for any for the inconvenience that it caused for the residents of the area, for the uncomfortable position that I know that some of our council members were put into during that period of time. Again, we did take action out of the primary issue was safety of children, and that was why we took action. But as I said, I do apologize. We make this a learning experience, and we move on, and we'll get those signs put in just as soon as we can. I do have 3 or 4 other, I guess 5 other things for you real quick. We have learned that the legislature's interim study on the potential for municipalization of electricity is back online again. In fact, next Tuesday, the mayor and I are scheduled to provide testimony to the legislature on that particular issue. I have some good news to share on the realm of water wells. Our hardworking staff working together with the contractor is inching closer toward well number 215 coming back online. It's probably going to produce around 50 gallons per minute. You might recall that's one of the ones that had mechanical issues, and our company we've been working with has gotten that back online. A number of you have met with a number of folks on the council have met already with IBTS, the company that's doing our code rewrite, having one-on-ones with them, but but coming up on November the 28th from 3 until 7 p.m., 3 p.m. till 7 p.m., they're going to be having a kickoff, a public open house here at City Hall in this room. Everyone in the community is invited. It's a drop-by thing. Come by. They'll have posters set up. They'll be here to answer questions, talk to folks about what they're doing, and to garner feedback from the community on their project. Big trash pickup has kind of snuck up on us. It's coming up next week, November the 13th through the 17th, so encourage folks to take advantage of that. For council, I just wanted to give you all a heads up. Coming up on the next agenda on the 21st is our annual discussion or actual action for schedule of meetings, so you might want to start thinking about that and the time. This is the time to set the time for those meetings for next year. The final thing is regarding the holidays. City crews are busily working on installing decorations and lights and lighting for this coming holiday season. And he probably won't share with you himself, so I'll point out for you, if you don't mind, Vice Mayor Knapp, the Christmas tree lighting is coming up next Friday, the 17th, and I understand Vice Chairman Knapp is going to be throwing the switch at that particular event. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Forgive me. One more thing, if you don't mind. Code enforcement, I wanted to give you an update on that. Our total NOVs issued to date now is 1,128. 262 of those are in Ward 1, 375 in Ward 2, 251 in Ward 3, and 240 in Ward 4. And we currently have 72 that are open. That's probably a high mark for us. and 1,057 have been closed or completed.
Thank you. Item 15, council members' announcements, comments, and proposals. Tonight, let's start down at Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I want to thank the third graders and their families and Mrs. Craig for coming out and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance earlier tonight. Like I said then, one of the funnest things I get to do is meet all those third graders. Tried to greet them all and tell them thank you. And they all just wanted to meet the mayor. Also, we're in November, and for Men's Health Awareness Month, I told some students that I would not shave, so it's No Shave November. So I know Mr. Palmer is doing the same thing over there. So until it gets too scraggly, I'll just keep this up. I would like to just explain, I was not at the last meeting, I apologize, but I feel that it was an important thing that I participated in. The Oklahoma Academy Town Hall process. This year, there were a group of about a little over 100 people from all over the state. There were a few students that were involved, a lot of people involved in the election process, election board secretaries. There were, I counted 8 legislators. I think there may have been more than that, but 8 that I knew were there. It was all about the election process, from redistricting to poll workers. The average age of poll workers across the state is 78 years old, and so we made some recommendations to enhance that a little better, get more people involved. Early voting was another issue. Voter apathy was really a big topic, and there were 34 pages of recommendations that we put together for the final draft. Then we had debate, and each of the 5 groups had up to 5 amendments that they could make. So I don't have the final copy yet. I don't think that we'll get that. When that becomes available, if you're interested in the election process and voting process, I would encourage you to get a hold of that. It will be presented to the governor on the first full day of the legislative session. On February 6th, will be presented to House and Senate leadership that day as well, and I believe the full House and Senate. But when that occurs, I just encourage you to look over that. There's, like I said, 34 pages of recommendations, and we finished our work the last night we were there, probably about maybe 7 p.m. And then at 5 a.m. we had our copy to review for our 6:45 meeting. So they worked us pretty hard. Believe me, I put in my hours there rather than being here. But it was quite a good learning experience as well as networking. But I believe these recommendations over time, nothing's going to happen this legislative session, especially with bill filing coming up next month. But over time, that we will improve the election process, especially voter apathy. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Shirey?
Yes, I have several items. This last week, I lost one of my best friends, Jerry Biggers. I grew up together. We lived about a block apart. And the young man had a very, very rigorous life, and he showed exactly what he was made out of because he went to the top. And he did that on pure personality and his ability to get along with people. And he was a great guy at that. We had a meeting today with the IBTS people, and they explained where they were going. I think we're going to have some, if we want to get Bethany ship-shape and straightened up, we're probably going to have to meet with the folks on 23rd Street, because they have thrown a lot of roadblocks in a city that should be able to make its own decisions on our ordinances, and they're not going to allow it. I I see that we have some people called deputies in the city of Bethany, and if I could understand what these are and what their duties are, I would appreciate it very much. Big Trash Day is coming up. You say the 13th through the 17th.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Will that be each ward for one day, or will it be a blitz from north to south?
To my knowledge, it's the same blitz as what we did last time.
Well, a lot of people, thought, well, we're going to have a north to south pickup and not a blitz. And I am one of those people that got his stuff out on about the third day, and they were already by me going south. And I was required to make a contribution to the city of Bethany for my pickups because they sent them out and picked them up out of my driveway. Also, to the city manager, if you would allow us as traffic commissioners to take some of the blunt that you have to take, because we are the political end of this, and this business that we had at the school was more political than it was, well, it was very much safety wise, but I think that, we could have addressed that better by going with the political end of it and having those people come to us and we discuss it with them. The Ward 4, which I live in, has the least amount of knobs, and it's due in large part to driving around and looking at what your area looks like as city councilman, and just asking those people to help you out on cleaning up your area. And as far as No Shave November goes, my time in the Navy taught me that you didn't have to have hot water to shave with, because I've spent many a day with the cold water on a ship shaving. And tonight I came in and getting ready for city council, and my hot water tank had gone out, and I didn't have any hot water. So I had to go to the microwave, stick a half a gallon in there, warm it up, and come back and shave. And that's the way we used to do it in the Navy. We used to have our stewards go warm us up a little bowl of water, and we'd come back and soap up and shave. And there was never a no-shave November in the Navy. You shaved every day, or somebody was on your case. Now things have changed. I remember, it's been 60 years since I was in there, so I know that things have changed. And I like, you guys are macho. We were just a bunch of, swabs. That's all I have. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Actually, I'm just trying to keep up with Mr. Herron here with his beard he's got going on. So, Mr. McCutcheon?
I had hot water this morning, Mr. Shirey. It was nice. I want to make mention of a gentleman who I became very fond of as a young man. Charlie Michaels passed away not yesterday. I think it was Sunday night. He's one of my constituents and John's. He was a firefighter over here at Bethany, and he retired over there, and then later went to work over at the Putnam City Transportation Department, where I worked with him for about 8 years. And as a young man, about 18 years old, he's one of the fellas that took me under his wings, and I learned a lot of stuff from that man. I don't know how many of you knew him, but I did in a special way, and appreciate his wife, who taught with my wife for many years in the Putnam City School District. His daughter, he has a couple of children. His daughter worked with me as well, so I got to really know that family. And the fire department is pretty sad today that they've lost one of their own. And he lost his battle to cancer. And I just wanted to make mention of
Charlie tonight. Some of you may know him as Jimmy. And let's look here. His service is Friday at 10 a.m. at the Lutheran Church here on Northwest 23rd, 6501 Northwest 23rd. And I just wanted to make mention of him tonight. He was a wonderful, wonderful man.
Thank you. Mr. Herron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing tonight.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to just offer my condolences to the Moore family. Clay Moore lost his mother. They were one of the founding families of Council Road Baptist Church. There's some old signs around Bethany of just a sign in the ground and people having a little service out there, and she will be missed. Ron Sports World speaks for itself. Anybody's been in business for 40 plus years in a small community like that, and to dominate outside of that community is just amazing. And they're amazing people. If you don't know them well, you should get to know them well. It'll take a while. He won't say that to you for a couple times, but once they loosen up, they're a treasure trove of information, especially on Bethany, the history of Bethany, and the ongoings that have happened in Bethany. The website, I'm sickened by the website, disgusted by the website, completely disgusted. I mean, I don't care if it's 50,000 or 60,000, the number a year for a website. That is ridiculous in the free market. I mean, Google and GoDaddy offered to do my website for $2,500 a year. I mean, my website covers a lot of locations, and it covers dozens of computers, and it covers all of the safety for internet viruses and the recovery. If we get a virus, and they all go down if they crash. And I felt that was high, but I've seen a lot of website prices, and that's unbelievable. And that doesn't count if we have a crash. If all our systems crash, they come out and fix it, and they bill you by the hour, and that's probably $100,000, $200,000. So that's not counting that. If we crash, they come out and tell you you've crashed, then they bill you for it. But the true cost is unknown of what our website's costing us. Chain of command, I would like for JD to, in our interactions with the citizens, ask that he ask people to follow the chain of command. And what I mean is KP was elected with an agenda. He ran on an agenda. He was elected by the public, and so were the rest of us, which is refreshing. And his videos that he is shooting are almost viral. They're not viral, but they're almost viral. And the feedback has been tremendous from developers, from builders that he and I, the people from Bethany, grew up with, potential business people coming into the city. It's been incredible. The citizens are saying, why couldn't we have done this before? And there's no reason we couldn't have done it before. If somebody asks a question, if enough people ask the question, put it on Facebook Live, put it on on the internet. But there seems to be a poll of where the information is coming from, and the information is not correct. The city council is in charge, period. He is the head of the city council, and I would like before information goes out to the public, for at least, it could have solved a lot of problems in the past, at least run it past KP before information is disseminated all over the city, and it's wrong, flat out wrong, and it never should have been. In some cases, ordinances were violated, and it never should have been done. And those of us familiar with Bethany in the area could have stopped that, just if we would have known about it. And surprises are over. We're out of the surprise business. I mean, people should not tell us something that surprises us, that's being done in our name, because everything that the staff does is being done in the citizens' name, which is us. And when we get blindsided, those days are over. We're not going to be blindsided again. But the videos and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. His videos, and he's talking about making it into a news channel, a mayor's channel, which Brian Taylor tried that and really just didn't have the knowledge and all to do it, and the wherewithal to do it. He had a studio right in here. If anybody remembers that here, I don't know if anybody was here, but he had a studio right inside this room set up, but it just didn't work. But we've had such good feedback, and the company that films it, they use 2 cameras, like, you know, to get double shots, and it's all professionally done. But I'd like to have you put on the next agenda to discuss hiring them to do his videos, if we could, and discuss that at the next meeting, because they are just from a PR standpoint, not that PR, but a PR of attracting business and things. It creates a lot of talk, and we've all had, or some of us have had, very productive talks with people who want to come in Bethany because of all the things that are going on. And KP is the face of the city, and I think just continuing that and growing on that would help us a lot. And what Jeff said on town hall meetings, if Randy had signs made up, Randy Lunstra, that said town hall meeting Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, just generic, and he'd go out and he'd plan them, and we would have town hall meetings right here in this room, and we would go ahead and put it up publish it as a stated meeting, so we could have all the councilmen wanted here. And if you think you know what your citizens, the people you represent, the bosses of the city, if you think you know how they feel, you should have town hall meetings, because you shouldn't think what their wants are. You should know what their wants are. If you're not interacting with your constituents, you're not doing them any good. You have to know exactly what their desires and what their fears are, and everything that concerns them. And where KP is doing just a bang up job of it is he's keeping them informed along the way of how the process works. He's got a very aggressive agenda, and I love his agenda. And it's gonna take some hard moving, hard rushing forward to get that done. And the more you keep the citizens informed, the more they are, just as you see with the 23rd Street group, we had 75 people there, I think, or something, pushing that up and looking for new business. Everybody's talking and looking for more businesses, which will create more on 39th, more on 23rd. And it is creating more on 39th, and it is creating more on 23rd. But I think voter apathy that Jeff went to on that conference too, town hall meetings also will help the voter apathy. And I know that KP is doing a lot to help voter apathy. But if there's any doubt at all what your citizens think, have a town hall meeting. Have 10 of them. And you'll be very enlightened. Because the citizens of Bethany are quiet, they're reserved. But you get them in here, they will not be quiet and reserved. They'll let you know exactly what they're thinking. And that's good. You need to know that. So I encourage town hall meetings, anybody that might want to do them. So that's all I got.
Thank you. And thank you for the kind words. Had I really been aware that I was going to be the face of a city, I might have shaved or at least trimmed it a little tighter than what I've done so far. So it's kind of a scary thought. Mr. Palmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are having a town hall meeting at Two Lakes Baptist Church on Monday, November 13th, 2017 at 7 p.m. And thank you, Councilman Moore, for that shot in the arm, because you're exactly right. We need to know what the residents would like the city government to do in the city of Bethany. And one of the solutions that we've come up with is the vision plan that has been developed over a period of time in the Bethany District Neighborhood Association. And now we actually have a document that the residents can look at, which will outline the progress related to this neighborhood. And it will, hopefully with the help of Mr. Caton, we can get some approval on some curbing and some drainage and some streetscape, so that we can allow the residents to review and look at what the potential could be in our neighborhood. And I'm excited that this is something that's going to happen, and it's a possibility, and we want your participation. So if you live in Ward 2 and you would like to participate, please come to Two Lakes Baptist Church Monday night, November 13th at 7 p.m. Prior to that, hopefully by Thursday of this week, we'll actually have a document that you can look at to review and mark up and come with the document to the meeting, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. So I'm excited that we're getting to a point now where we can have line item solutions to problems that are in our neighborhood, and we can allow the residents to express what they want, how they want it, and hopefully by the next fiscal budget, we can have allocated items and money set aside for these projects in Ward 2. So I'm excited that we're doing that. I know there's a lot of activity on 23rd Street, and I understand that, but the neighborhoods in Bethany are vital to our success, and we're providing a solution to get to that point, and I would seek your involvement, and please make a point to come to this meeting. Hopefully, we'll blast Facebook and social media so that you'll be aware of this meeting that's upcoming. So with that in mind, that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everybody that this Friday, City Hall will be closed to honor our veterans. Also, I've been thinking about something, and I would like to, even though there is no issue that I'm aware of, I've been thinking about something that the City of Bethany has had and the staff of the City of Bethany has had over the years, but it's been a long time since it's been formed for our employees, and that's a personnel board. And I think we need to look at forming a personnel board again for our employees. And from what I've learned, that's a 5-member board, one from each board. So each council member would need to get together and decide upon who they wanted to appoint, and then I would appoint one at large for having a total of 5 that would simply be willing to convene to listen to any grievance or anything of any city employee or staff in case of whatever issue. And I just think we need to be proactive in doing what we need to do as a council to make this city and this place the greatest place in the world to work. And so I think that would be a very good thing to do and look into. Item 16 is new business. Does anyone have any new business?
Well, it's not new business, but I would concur with the mayor related to the personnel committee. Happy employees do a great job, and we need a process to allow them to air any grievances that they may have. And we appreciate what they do, and they need to know that we're concerned as a city council as to what they're doing and how they're being treated and what needs to be done to fix any problems that should arise. So.
And I think you mentioned starting, it's been done before, a long time ago when I was young, a lunch with the mayor. If somebody wants to go to lunch, they can go to lunch with you.
Yes, I'm going to do that.
Open door policy. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but.
No, I'm all for that.
But if anybody wanted to have lunch with any of us too, I'm sure most of us would be more than happy to.
You buy.
Unless you're going, then you buy it.
I have one thing that I'd like to bring up on new business, unless anybody else has anything else on new business they want to bring up. Something I've been thinking about is it is getting colder, as we've all been rudely, awakened to today. And soon the ice will form on the limbs, and they will hang lower. And I know that we've told the citizens that they need to be trimming their trees over the streets because we have fire trucks that are very expensive that we don't want damaged. And they have equipment on the top of them, cameras and lights and sirens and all kinds of stuff. And the city has spent a lot of money on those, and I think we should do whatever we need to do to protect them. And I know we have a certified arborist on staff now, and so I would like to maybe suggest some kind of game plan to possibly let him spearhead some kind of idea of looking and researching all the streets and the low-hanging tree limbs to try to protect our fire trucks. Does anybody else have anything else?
No, it's a great idea. Being proactive on that can save a lot of money. It's just like OG&E spends a lot of money cutting trees down, but it sure saves a lot of money in the long run too.
Yeah.
I think something more important than that would be, the winter is coming, we always have ice storms. These trees hanging over the streets, together with the ice, break off. And that is even worse than knocking off a camera because a fire truck or an emergency vehicle cannot go up and down those streets.
So if we get them trimmed, then they settle both problems, don't we?
Of course, a lot of people say they love their
if we have somebody that's an arborist, they can tell if it's got Dutch elm disease or if it's dead or, you know, then it's just waiting to fall over.
There's a set height, though, isn't there? Wasn't there a set height?
12 feet.
12 feet? Okay. If there is no new business, then I consider us adjourned until November 21st, 2017. With that, I open up the Bethany Public Works Authority meeting. Item 1 is a consent docket. Items A and B. Do I have a motion for approval? Do I have
So
a
moved.
second? I have a second.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until November 21st, 2017. With that, I open up the Bethany Hospital Trust. Item 1 is consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? No new business. I declare us adjourned until November 21st, 2017. With that, I open up the Bethany Development Authority. Item 1 is consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? No new business. I declare us adjourned until November 21st, 2017. And with that, I declare us adjourned.